The text came while I was fixing a broken radar in the middle of a 14-hour shift in Okinawa. My hands were still covered in grease when I read the words that ended my marriage. I'm with someone younger now. I'm taking everything. Don't come home. I stared at the screen for 30 seconds. Around me, the hum of electronics continued. The steady drone of cooling fans, the occasional beep of diagnostic equipment, the distant sound of jets taking off from the runway. My shift supervisor, Technical Sergeant Williams, walked past, checking progress on the repair. His footsteps echoed in the hangar, bouncing off metal walls that had contained 1,000 conversations like this one. Military life doesn't pause for personal disasters. Before we dive in, smash that like button and drop a comment below. I wiped my hands on my coveralls. The same coveralls I'd worn through 3 deployments, through promotions and demotions, through the kind of work that keeps million-dollar aircraft flying and people alive. The grease came off my palms, but the words on the screen seemed to burn themselves into my retinas. "How's it looking, Martinez?" Williams asked, his voice carrying the kind of casual authority that comes from 20 years of managing crises, both mechanical and human. "Almost done, Sergeant. Give me 20 more minutes." My voice sounded normal. Steady. Professional. Inside, something was shifting, like tectonic plates finding a new position after an earthquake. I finished the job. Every bolt torqued to specification. 45 foot-pounds on the primary connections, 32 on the secondary mounts. Every connection tested twice with the multimeter. Resistance readings recorded in the logbook with the same careful handwriting I'd been using for 12 years of military service. When you're responsible for equipment that keeps people alive, you don't cut corners. Not even when your world is falling apart. The radar system came online at 23:47 hours. Green lights across the diagnostic panel. System operational. Mission capable. I signed off on the maintenance record and handed it to Williams. "Good work, Martinez. Get some rest." Back in my quarters, I opened her message again. Read it 3 more times. The words didn't change, but their weight seemed to shift each time I processed them. 12 years of marriage. 14 years together if you counted the dating. Half my adult life, reduced to a text message sent while I was 7,000 miles away, serving my country. Then I typed back 3 words. "Check the account." Her response came immediately, the timestamp showing it was 6 a.m. back home in California. She was awake early. Or maybe she'd never gone to sleep. "What account?" I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my laptop and began making phone calls. The signs had been there for months, but I'd chosen military discipline over suspicion. Sarah had started changing passwords without telling me. First her email, then her social media, then our streaming services. Little things that seemed innocent individually but formed a pattern when you stepped back and looked at the bigger picture. Our video calls became shorter, more strained. Where we used to talk for an hour every evening, her morning coffee matching my evening wind down. Now she seemed distracted, checking her phone, making excuses to end the call early. "Maybe we should take a break from calling every day," she'd said during our last video chat 3 weeks ago. Her hair looked different, styled in a way I didn't recognize. She was wearing makeup at 8 a.m. on a Tuesday, which wasn't like her. "It's hard for me, you being so far away." I should have trusted my gut then. My gut was telling me that faithful wives don't suddenly need space from their deployed husbands. Instead, I trusted 12 years of marriage. I trusted the woman who'd cried at my promotion ceremony, who'd helped me study for my NCO advancement tests, who'd promised to wait through 3 deployments. "I understand," I'd said, looking at her pixelated face on my laptop screen. "Whatever you need." But I wasn't completely naive. 3 weeks before deployment ended, I'd started making some adjustments. Nothing dramatic. Just precautions that any smart soldier takes when dealing with uncertainty. I'd moved the deed to our house into a military trust, perfectly legal, designed to protect assets during deployment. It's a common practice for service members who want to ensure their property can't be manipulated while they're overseas. The paperwork was straightforward, handled through the base legal office. Sarah had signed the initial documents 2 years ago when I first deployed, agreeing that military assets should be protected during overseas assignments. I opened a separate account at a different bank and transferred half our savings, About $47,000. Again, perfectly legal. I was the primary earner, my combat pay was tax-free, and the money came from my deployments. The account was in my name only, established through Navy Federal Credit Union's online banking system. I removed her name as beneficiary on my military life insurance and updated my service members' group life insurance to list my parents as beneficiaries instead. The forms were simple, just a few checkboxes and a signature, processed through the base personnel office. Most importantly, I scanned every important document we owned and stored them in encrypted cloud storage. Birth certificates, marriage certificate, car titles, insurance policies, investment account statements, my military records, tax returns for the past 7 years. Everything that proved who owned what and when. Sarah had power of attorney for household bills, utilities, mortgage payments, routine maintenance. Nothing more. The legal document was specific about its limitations, drafted by a JAG officer who'd seen too many deployed soldiers get cleaned out by unfaithful spouses. Now, sitting in my barracks room 12 time zones away, I was grateful for those precautions. My roommate, Airman First Class Johnson, was snoring in the bunk across from me, but I felt wide awake despite the 14-hour shift I'd just finished. Our house had a security system, 8 cameras inside and out, all connected to cloud storage through our internet provider. I'd installed it myself 2 years ago after a string of break-ins in our neighborhood. Sarah knew about them, had helped me position them for optimal coverage, but she'd probably forgotten about the cloud storage feature in the excitement of her new romance. I logged in from my laptop, using the secure connection provided by base IT services. The first camera showed our front door. Normal. Our mailbox, the small garden Sarah had planted last spring, the American flag I'd hung before deploying. Everything looked the same. Camera 2. Our driveway, and there he was, a motorcycle, black Kawasaki Ninja, maybe 5 years old, parked where I usually left my truck. Behind it, Sarah's Honda Civic, and behind that, my 1967 Camaro, the one I'd spent 3 years restoring in the garage. Camera 3. Our living room. There he was, 20-something kid with sleeve tattoos covering both arms, wearing distressed jeans and boots. He was sitting on my couch, the leather sectional I'd bought with my re-enlistment bonus, the one Sarah and I had picked out together at Ashley Furniture. He was wearing my old Stanford hoodie, the gray one I'd left hanging in the closet, the one I'd bought during a weekend trip we'd taken for our anniversary 3 years ago. Sarah appeared on camera, walking from the kitchen carrying 2 beers. My beer, Stella Artois, from the case I'd stocked in the refrigerator before leaving. She handed him one, then settled next to him on the couch. Close. Comfortable. Like they'd been doing this for weeks. I watched for 10 minutes, taking screenshots with the camera app on my phone. The kid was young, maybe 12 years younger than her 34. He had that careless confidence of someone who'd never faced real consequences, never had to balance a budget or make mortgage payments or stay awake for 36 hours fixing critical equipment in a foreign country. They were watching Netflix on our big screen TV, using the account I paid for monthly through automatic deduction from my checking account. The irony wasn't lost on me. I closed the laptop and went to find the JAG officer. Captain Rebecca Morrison was working late in the base legal office, reviewing case files under fluorescent lights that made everything look harsh and institutional. "Captain, I need to discuss a domestic legal matter." She looked up from her paperwork. Morrison was a sharp woman in her early 40s, someone who'd seen every kind of legal problem that military life could create. "What's the situation, Staff Sergeant?" "My wife is committing adultery and possibly financial fraud while I'm deployed. I need a civilian attorney referral." Morrison's expression shifted from casual interest to professional focus. "How certain are you about the adultery?" "Video evidence, and she admitted it via text message." "Financial fraud?" "She has limited power of attorney for household expenses. I suspect she's exceeded those limitations." Morrison reached into her desk drawer and pulled out a business card. "Rebecca Chen, civilian attorney in San Diego. Former military, understands UCMJ implications. Tell her I referred you." "Thank you, ma'am." "Martinez," she said as I reached the door. "Document everything. Screenshots, bank statements, communication records. Everything." "Already on it, ma'am." Rebecca Chen answered her phone at 2 a.m. California time on the first ring. Former Army JAG officers don't sleep like normal people. Chen Law Office. Miss Chen, this is Staff Sergeant Martinez. Captain Morrison at Kadena referred me. I have a domestic situation developing while I'm deployed. Talk to me. I explained the situation, the text message, the video evidence, my suspicions about financial impropriety. Chen listened without interrupting, occasionally making notes that I could hear through the phone connection. Can you prove fraud? She asked when I finished. I've got documentation showing the limits of her power of attorney, bank statements showing unusual activity in the weeks leading up to her confession, screenshots of her and another man in my house using my property. Good. How soon can you get stateside? I can use emergency leave for domestic crisis. Regulations allow up to 2 weeks for situations involving potential fraud or adultery affecting military personnel. 48 hours to get transport arranged. Do it. Don't tell her you're coming. Don't call, don't text, don't give her any warning. We want to catch this situation before she can cover her tracks or move more assets. Understood. One more thing, Martinez. This is going to get ugly. Are you prepared for that? I thought about the kid sitting on my couch, drinking my beer, wearing my clothes. I thought about 12 years of marriage ending with a text message sent while I was fixing equipment that keeps people alive. Yes, ma'am? I'm prepared. I filed the emergency leave paperwork that afternoon. Staff Sergeant Williams approved it without questions. Military supervisors understand that home front emergencies take priority over routine operations. By Thursday morning, I was on a C-130 transport heading to Travis Air Force Base in California. By Friday evening, I was checked into a Hampton Inn in Escondido, 26 miles from my house, using a credit card Sarah didn't know existed. The hotel room was generic: beige carpet, floral bedspread, a view of the parking lot where civilian families loaded luggage into SUVs for weekend trips to places like Disneyland and the San Diego Zoo. Normal people living normal lives, dealing with normal problems like traffic and grocery shopping and whether to upgrade their cable package. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened my laptop. Time to go to work. I didn't go home immediately. Instead, I went to work, the kind of methodical, systematic work that 12 years in the military had taught me. When you're troubleshooting a complex system, you start with the fundamentals and work your way through each component until you find the failure point. First stop, Pacific Coast Bank, where Sarah and I had maintained our joint checking and savings accounts for 8 years. I walked in at 9 a.m. sharp on Saturday morning, wearing my dress uniform, full ribbons, National Defense Service Medal, Good Conduct Medal, Air Force Achievement Medal with oak leaf cluster, Overseas Service Ribbon with Bronze Star device. The visual impact was intentional. The branch manager, Mrs. Peterson, recognized me immediately. She was a woman in her 50s who'd helped us open our first joint account when I was still a senior airman, fresh off my first deployment. She'd processed our car loans, our mortgage application, Sarah's student loan consolidation. Staff Sergeant Martinez, she smiled, then noticed my expression. I thought you were overseas. Just returned yesterday. Emergency leave. I need to review some recent account activity on all accounts associated with my Social Security number. Her smile faded as she led me to her private office. The walls were decorated with community service awards and photos of her grandchildren. A normal life, built on honest work and predictable problems. Let me pull up your records, she said, typing into her computer terminal. Her expression changed as data populated the screen. Her face went through a series of micro-expressions. Confusion, concern, then what looked like professional embarrassment. Oh my, there have been some unusual transactions. She turned her monitor so I could see. The joint checking account showed a series of large withdrawals over the past 6 weeks. $5,000 here, $8,000 there, culminating in a $15,000 electronic transfer 3 days ago. The day before Sarah sent me the text message. But that wasn't the worst part. Staff Sergeant, there's also this. She pulled up another account screen. A home equity line of credit opened 2 weeks ago. $75,000 based on our home's appraised value of $210,000. The signature on the electronic application showed both our names. I leaned forward, studying the screen. May I see the original application documents? Mrs. Peterson printed them out, her printer making the kind of whirring noise that accompanies bad news. The signature looked like mine. Similar handwriting, same general flow. But I could see the differences. The M in Martinez was slightly wrong. The J in Jacob had too much flourish. This is fraud, I said quietly. I never signed this application. I've been deployed in Okinawa for 6 months. Mrs. Peterson's face went pale. We'll need to freeze all accounts immediately and file a report with our fraud department. This could trigger a federal investigation. Do what you need to do. She made several phone calls while I sat in her office, watching people conduct normal banking business through the glass partition. A young couple opening their first savings account. An elderly man making a deposit from his Social Security check. Regular people dealing with regular money problems, not the kind that involve forged signatures and federal crimes. 20 minutes later, all accounts were frozen pending investigation. Mrs. Peterson handed me a temporary debit card connected to a new account containing the remaining legitimate funds, about $12,000 that predated the suspicious activity. The fraud investigation team will contact you within 48 hours, she said. Staff Sergeant, I'm sorry this happened. We should have caught the signature discrepancy. Mrs. Peterson, you've handled our accounts honestly for 8 years. This isn't your fault. Next, I drove to our house, or rather, I drove past it. The motorcycle was still there, along with Sarah's car. But parked behind them both was my 1967 Camaro, the one I'd restored over 3 years, the one that was legally registered in my name only, insured under my military auto policy, titled through the California DM-5 with my name as sole owner. I parked 3 blocks away and called the San Diego Police Department non-emergency line. SDPD, how can I help you? I need to report a stolen vehicle. A 1967 Chevrolet Camaro, license plate number 7G4H891, registered to Jacob Martinez. It's currently being driven by someone without my permission. Are you the registered owner, sir? Yes, I have the title and registration. I can meet officers at the location where the vehicle is currently parked. Units are en route. Please meet them at the address you provided. I waited in my rental car, a gray Honda Accord that looked like every other rental car in Southern California, and watched the house where I'd lived for 5 years. The house where Sarah and I had hosted barbecues for my squadron, where we'd spent lazy Sunday mornings reading the newspaper and drinking coffee, where we talked about having children someday when my military career stabilized. 2 patrol cars arrived at 4 p.m. I met the officers on the street, showing them my military ID, the car title, registration documents, and insurance cards. Officer Martinez, no relation despite the name, was a 20-year veteran with the kind of calm competence you develop after seeing every possible human stupidity. So you're deployed overseas and your wife's boyfriend is driving your car? That's correct. I have video evidence of him using the vehicle without my permission. We'll need to see that evidence. I showed them the screenshots from our home security system, time-stamped and date-stamped. The officers examined them on my phone screen, making notes in their report books. This is pretty straightforward, Officer Martinez said. Unauthorized use of a vehicle by someone who's not on the title or insurance. We'll recover the vehicle and make an arrest if the current driver can't prove legal permission to use it. They knocked on the door at 8 p.m. I watched from down the street as Sarah answered, confused. The setting sun cast long shadows across our front yard, and I could see her body language change as the officers explained why they were there. The boyfriend came outside after a few minutes. Cocky, agitated, the kind of young man who'd probably never dealt with actual legal consequences. I couldn't hear the conversation, but his gestures were animated, defensive. Then I saw the moment he realized this wasn't going to be resolved with charm or attitude. The handcuffs came out at 8:17 p.m. They arrested him on the spot. Unauthorized use of a motor vehicle, a felony in California when the vehicle is worth more than $950. My restored Camaro was appraised at $42,000. While the police handled that situation, I drove to the county courthouse and met Rebecca Chen in the after-hours filing office. She was a compact woman in her 40s. Former Army JAG who'd transitioned to civilian practice specializing in military family law. She understood the unique legal challenges that military families face. We're filing multiple actions simultaneously, she explained as we completed paperwork under fluorescent lights that hummed with the kind of electrical noise you hear in government buildings worldwide. Restraining order preventing her from accessing joint accounts. Fraud complaint for the forged HELOC signature. Property recovery for personal items. Emergency motion to prevent sale or encumbrance of the marital home. By Sunday morning, the house was under court order. Sarah couldn't sell it, couldn't take out additional loans against it, couldn't change the locks, couldn't remove my personal property. The legal system had essentially frozen our entire domestic situation pending investigation and resolution. My phone rang at noon while I was eating a sandwich in my hotel room, watching a Lakers game on ESPN. "What did you do?" Sarah's voice was shaky, higher pitched than normal. "I protected what's mine. The bank froze everything. They're saying I committed fraud. The police arrested Derek. They took your car." "Derek, is that his name? How old is Derek, Sarah?" "That's not... Jake, this is crazy. We can work this out. Come home. Let's talk like adults." "I am home. I'm just not at your house anymore." "My house? It's our house. Check the deed. It's been in military trust since January. You have no legal claim to it without my consent." The line went quiet for a long moment. I could hear her breathing, could picture her in our kitchen, my kitchen, trying to process the implications. The car... Derek was driving a vehicle registered to someone else without permission. In California, that's grand theft auto when the vehicle is worth more than $950. My Camaro is worth $42,000. "Jake, please." I made a mistake. I was lonely. I was confused. You've been gone so much, and You were calculating. This wasn't impulse, Sarah. You planned it. Changed passwords weeks ago, moved money systematically, filed fraudulent loan applications. You brought another man into our home and gave him access to my personal property. You just didn't plan very well. I hung up and turned off my phone. The thing about fraud investigations, once they start, they develop their own momentum. Banks have legal obligations to report suspected fraud to federal authorities. Police departments have protocols for financial crimes that cross state lines. Military installations have regulations about service members' domestic situations that affect security clearances. By Monday morning, Sarah's signature forgery had triggered an FBI investigation. Home equity loan fraud involving military service members falls under federal jurisdiction, particularly when it occurs while the service member is deployed overseas. By Tuesday, the investigation had uncovered other irregularities. Sarah had been using our joint credit cards for cash advances, systematically extracting money to fund her new lifestyle. She'd opened store credit accounts at luxury retailers, listing me as a co-signer using information from our tax returns. She'd applied for apartment rentals in downtown San Diego, where Derek lived, using fake employment verification documents that claimed I had approved the applications. Her social media accounts went dark Wednesday morning. The Instagram account where she'd posted photos of our life together, military balls, beach vacations, the day I came home from my first deployment, suddenly showed no posts. Her Facebook profile became private. Her LinkedIn account, where she'd always been proud to list herself as a military spouse supporting our nation's heroes, disappeared entirely. Her friends stopped calling me to check on both of you. Her family learned what she'd done when FBI agents contacted them as character references for the fraud investigation. Derek Anthony Williamson, age 22, unemployed motorcycle mechanic with a prior arrest for petty theft, made bail Thursday morning. But his record now included felony charges for unauthorized use of a motor vehicle. His job at the motorcycle dealership disappeared when his employer learned about his arrest. His apartment lease became complicated when the landlord discovered his new criminal charges. Sarah moved in with her sister in Riverside County, 90 miles inland where housing was cheaper and questions were fewer. 2 weeks later, my phone rang again. I was sitting in a Starbucks in Carlsbad, reading a Tom Clancy novel and drinking coffee that cost more than I usually spent on meals. The normalcy of civilian life felt strange after months of military routine. "Jake, I need to see you, face to face." "Why?" "Because we were married for 12 years. Because I love you. Because I made a terrible mistake and I want to fix it." I marked my place in the book and looked around the coffee shop. Normal people everywhere. Students with laptops, business people having meetings, mothers with strollers, retirees reading newspapers. People dealing with ordinary problems like deadlines and soccer practice and whether to refinance their mortgages. Love? I said. You emptied our bank account while I was serving overseas. You moved another man into our house. You stole $75,000 using my identity. You gave him permission to drive a car that took me 3 years to restore. What part of that demonstrates love? I was going to pay it back. Derek was going to help me. We had plans. With what money? Derek's unemployment benefits? His income from the motorcycle shop where he doesn't work anymore because he's a convicted felon? Her breathing got sharp. Don't be cruel. I'm not being cruel, Sarah. I'm being accurate. Cruel would be calling you names or making threats. Accurate is stating the facts of what you chose to do. Can't we try counseling? Can't we go to therapy? Can't we? You made your choice. You chose Derek. You chose to steal from me. You chose to lie to banks and credit agencies and everyone who trusted you. You chose to commit felonies while I was serving our country overseas. I'm just accepting your choices and responding accordingly. I want to come home. You burned that home down, Sarah. Now you get to live in the ashes. She started crying, the kind of crying that sounds real over the phone but might not be. Jake, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know what I was thinking. I was confused and lonely, and Derek made me feel young again. Derek is 22. He made you feel young because you were robbing the cradle. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Fair is keeping your promises. Fair is honoring your commitments. Fair is not stealing from your husband while he's deployed. You gave up any claim to fairness when you decided to commit federal crimes. Please, I'll do anything. I'll go to counseling. I'll pay back every penny. I'll never contact Derek again. You'll serve your probation. You'll pay your restitution. You'll rebuild your life without me in it. I can't do this alone. You weren't alone. You had me. You had 12 years of marriage, financial security, and a husband who loved you. You traded all of that for a 22-year-old motorcycle mechanic with a criminal record. That was your choice. Live with it. She was quiet for a long time. Are you happy? Destroying my life like this? I didn't destroy your life, Sarah. I just documented what you destroyed yourself. The FBI didn't come after you because I wanted revenge. They came after you because you committed federal crimes. Derek didn't get arrested because I was angry. He got arrested because he stole my car. You didn't lose your friends because I turned them against you. You lost them because they found out who you really are. I made a mistake. No, a mistake is forgetting to pay a bill or saying something hurtful in an argument. What you did was make a series of calculated decisions over several months, each one designed to betray me and steal from me while I was serving overseas. That's not a mistake. That's a character flaw. I hung up and turned off my phone for 3 days. The legal system has its own timeline, different from the emotional timeline that people think they can control. Sarah's case moved through federal court with bureaucratic precision, each step documented and scheduled according to rules that don't care about feelings or regrets. Her plea hearing was scheduled for 6 weeks after her arrest. Rebecca Chen advised me to attend, not as emotional support for Sarah, but as a victim impact witness. I wore my dress uniform and sat in the gallery while Sarah stood before Judge Catherine Morrison. No relation to Captain Morrison at Kadena, despite the shared name. Sarah looked older than her 34 years. Stress and guilt have a way of aging people rapidly, and the woman I'd married looked like she'd lived through several difficult years in the space of 2 months. She was wearing a conservative gray suit that I didn't recognize, probably borrowed from her sister or purchased specifically for court appearances. Mrs. Martinez, Judge Morrison said, you've been charged with wire fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit bank fraud. How do you plead? Guilty, Your Honor. The words carried weight in the courtroom. Sarah's attorney, a public defender named James Wright, had clearly advised her that fighting the charges would result in harsher penalties. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged signatures, falsified documents, electronic records of fraudulent transactions. The court accepts your guilty plea. Sentencing is scheduled for 30 days from today. Until then, You remain free on your own recognizance with the understanding that any further criminal activity will result in immediate incarceration. Derek's case was handled separately. His attorney tried to argue that he was an unwitting accomplice, just a young man who'd been manipulated by an older woman. The prosecutor wasn't buying it. Mr. Williamson knew he was driving a vehicle that didn't belong to him, Assistant District Attorney Jennifer Park told the court. He knew the owner was deployed overseas. He knew he had no legal permission to use the vehicle. His age doesn't excuse his criminal behavior. Derek got 18 months in county jail, 3 years probation, and restitution requirements for the damage he'd done to my Camaro during a street race racing incident I learned about during his trial. Apparently, he'd been using my restored classic car to race other kids on the weekends, treating $42,000 of my work like a toy. Sarah's sentencing hearing was different, more complex, more painful. Judge Morrison reviewed the pre-sentencing report, which detailed Sarah's background, her marriage to a career military service member, her lack of prior criminal history, and the systematic nature of her crimes. Mrs. Martinez, the court recognizes that military spouses face unique challenges. Deployment separations are difficult. Financial pressures can be significant. However, these challenges do not excuse criminal behavior, particularly criminal behavior that targets the very service member who is serving our country overseas. Sarah stood silently while the judge continued. You violated not just your husband's trust, but the trust of financial institutions and government agencies. You committed identity theft against someone who was serving our nation in a foreign country. The court views this as particularly egregious. The sentence, 2 years probation, 800 hours of community service, full restitution of $75,000 plus interest and penalties, and a permanent felony record that would affect her employment, housing applications, and civil rights for the rest of her life. I watched from the gallery as she signed the court documents. Her hand was shaking. 3 hours after the sentencing, my phone rang. I was sitting in my rental car in the courthouse parking lot, watching lawyers and defendants and families navigate the concrete steps that separate justice from the outside world. Jake. Her voice was smaller now, defeated. Can we talk? Just for 5 minutes. Talk. Not on the phone. Face to face. I'm in the parking lot too. I can see your car. I looked around and spotted her standing next to her sister's Honda Civic 50 yards away. She looked fragile in the afternoon sunlight, like a person who'd aged a decade in the space of a year. 5 minutes, I said. We met at a concrete picnic table in the small park adjacent to the courthouse, the kind of place where people eat lunch from vending machines and try to process the legal consequences that just change their lives forever. Sarah sat across from me, her hands folded on the table. The engagement ring and wedding band I'd given her were gone. Her finger showed the pale indent where they'd been. I need you to know something, she said. What's that? I loved you. I really did. For all 12 years. I studied her face. The woman I'd married was still there, underneath the stress and guilt and legal consequences, but she looked like a stranger wearing Sarah's features. If you loved me, I said, explain the $75,000 you stole. Explain Derek wearing my clothes, driving my car, sleeping in my bed. I was scared. Of what? Of getting old. Of being alone. Of you coming home and realizing you'd outgrown me. She wiped her eyes with a tissue from her purse. You were becoming this strong, disciplined person through your military service. I was just stuck. Same job, same routine, same small life. So you decided to blow it up. I decided to feel alive again. Derek made me feel 25, like anything was possible. Derek was 22 years old with no job and a criminal record. What exactly did he make possible? Sarah was quiet for a long moment, watching a family help their elderly father navigate the courthouse steps with his walker. I know how it sounds now, she said, but when you're with someone that young, that excited about everything, it's intoxicating. He thought I was amazing. He thought I was the most beautiful, smartest woman he'd ever met. Because he'd never met many women. He was practically a child. He made me laugh. When did we stop laughing, Jake? I thought about that question. We stopped laughing when you started lying. When you started changing passwords and hiding things and planning to destroy our marriage while I was overseas. I never planned to destroy anything. I just wanted to feel something different. You wanted to feel something different, so you committed federal crimes? The money. I was going to pay it back. Derek and I were going to get jobs, real jobs, and we were going to pay back every penny. With what skills? What qualifications? What work history? She didn't answer. Sarah, Derek couldn't even hold a job at a motorcycle shop. What made you think he could help you pay back $75,000 in fraudulent loans? I wasn't thinking clearly. No, you were thinking very clearly. You were thinking about what you wanted in the moment without considering the consequences for anyone else. That's not unclear thinking. That's selfish thinking. A tear ran down her cheek. Do you hate me? I considered the question honestly. No, I don't hate you. Hate requires energy I don't want to spend on this anymore. Then what do you feel? Disappointed, relieved, and sorry for the person you used to be. Used to be? The Sarah I married would never have stolen from me. She would never have brought another man into our home while I was deployed. She would never have committed identity theft or lied to federal agencies. That person is gone. I don't know who you are now. I'm still me. No, you're not. The person I married had integrity. She kept her word. She understood that love means loyalty, not just feelings. You're someone different now. Sarah cried quietly for a minute. What happens now? You serve your probation. You pay your restitution. You rebuild your life without me in it. And you? I move on. To what? To whatever comes next that doesn't involve people who lie to me or steal from me. She reached across the table like she might touch my hand, then stopped. Jake, I know I don't have the right to ask this, but will you ever forgive me? I looked at her for a long time. The question hung in the air between us like something physical, something that required a careful answer. Forgiveness isn't the same as trust, I said finally. I forgive you for being human, for making mistakes, for getting scared and making bad choices. I don't forgive you for the planning, for the systematic betrayal, for stealing from me while I was serving overseas. That wasn't a mistake. That was a series of calculated decisions. So, no? So, forgiveness doesn't mean I forget what you're capable of. It doesn't mean I trust you again. It doesn't mean I want you in my life. It just means I'm not going to spend the rest of my life angry about who you chose to become. That's something, I guess. It's everything I can offer. We sat in silence for a few minutes, watching courthouse traffic flow around us. People entering with hope or fear, people leaving with relief or devastation. All of them learning that the legal system doesn't care about feelings, only facts. Jake? Yeah? Are you going to be okay? I almost smiled at that. Sarah, I survived 3 combat deployments, maintained million-dollar aircraft systems, and built a marriage that lasted 12 years with someone I trusted completely. I'll survive this too. I meant, are you going to be happy? I'm going to be fine. Happy is something I'll figure out on my own terms, with people who deserve to be part of it. She nodded and stood up. I guess this is goodbye then. Yeah, this is goodbye. She walked back toward her sister's car, then turned around one more time. For what it's worth, Jake, you're a good man. You always were. I hope you find someone who deserves that. I hope you find someone who helps you remember who you used to be. She got in the car and drove away. I sat at the picnic table for another 20 minutes, watching the sun move across the courthouse steps, feeling something shift inside my chest. Not closure exactly, but completion. The end of one story. The beginning of whatever came next. That was the last time I saw Sarah Martinez. 6 months later, I was Staff Sergeant Jake Martinez, soon-to-be civilian, owner of 40 acres in Montana, where the quiet doesn't lie and the work doesn't cheat, and the mountains don't make promises they can't keep. Keep, 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 keep.